here. I'll wait for a few more minutes. Earlier, I made a video on live stream about the importance of tipping, especially in a 1099 or self-employed individuals. And then the live stream was down. I had to come back, but I don't know. So good evening, everyone. Hey, Driver Lady Pro. Who else is on here? I'm driving, so. Nicole. Okay, let me stop. Look at this fool. Just kept on going, but past the red light like ain't no red light. Who else on here? And Shy Eyes. I can't see. Well, anyway. So I'm going to turn off the light. I'm sorry for if it's a little bit too dark. So anyway, let me go ahead and start. And please share, comment, like my videos. So the reason why I brought up about tipping was because I will be taking on another position. Well, another gig job. It's not really a gig job, but Domino's Pizza. I'm gonna see how that goes. I'm supposed to go to training tomorrow, and then I'm only gonna do it on the weekends. So it brought to me about tips. Now, some of y'all know I worked at Panera Bread about a year ago, and I was getting the cash tips and the mileage, and you get paid every day with the mileage and your tips, whether it be a credit card tip or cash tips. I reported everything on my taxes. Well, a lot of people don't, to be honest, and some people don't report all of it. They may be, the cash tips people make, people know darn well they're not reporting it. Now, unless the tip shows up on your statement, like your Uber Eats, or not Uber, but your Uber or Lyft statements, and you get paid tips on the app, and they pay, and it's part of your 1099 statement. I don't know if they break it down or not. I don't know. So some of y'all may need, some of y'all that gets 1099 and you get a lot of credit card tips on the app, do it show tips on the 1099? I don't remember because I didn't work. I'm not really sure if they do or not. I think they do, but I could be wrong. So anyway, the importance of reporting your tips, especially if you're a full-time driver and your primary income comes from 1099, you want to report your cash tips because of Social Security benefits on gig jobs. And the statistics shows that about a year, in the coming years, most positions, not just picking up groceries and driving people and food deliveries, a lot of positions are going to be independent contractors, working from home as customer service representatives, IT, technical. So a lot of companies are going to be hiring people in that capacity because, one, it saves them money, and a whole other benefits of not hiring regular employees. And if they do hire regular employees, they want to pay positions that used to pay $15, $16 an hour, and then they want to pay $10, $12 in Atlanta, for example, on someone's video, he was talking about Delta bag handlers. Back in the day, if you worked at Delta as a bag handlers, they used to pay them like $16, $17 an hour to handle bags. Now, with all the unionized and when Delta went bankrupt at one time and they're restructuring, now those same positions that used to pay $16, $18 an hour now pays $13, $12 an hour. So with the change in the economy going from a 1099 self-employed, you want to report those tips, because not so much that you figure that, well, $20, $30, $40 cash tips doesn't mean anything, but it's part of your Social Security statements. When it's time for you to collect on your Social Security, and you say, well, you know what, you 65, 68, 67, whatever age you have to be to retire, and you collect your Social Security, you have to think about years of cash tips that you did not report, and it's not a credit towards your Social Security. It's basically like Social Security that one pays through their job. Self-employment tax is paid as part of your Social Security. All of that is basically like a savings, like the government is trying to collect your Social Security, that $1,200, $1,500, or whatever the amount is in your lifetime. Dang it, this thing's reconnecting again. So the amount of money that you pay towards Social Security in your income, which includes all of your income, 1099s, W-2s, those tips has to be reported, because you will shortchange yourself in the long run. In the long run, when it's time to, when you say, well, why, when you hear a lot of people who collect Social Security because they may be a housewife, or the husband mainly worked, and they may get spousal benefits or widowers benefits and Social Security. They collect their husbands or their prospective spouses' Social Security, and a lot of times people work in service industries where they don't get paid a lot of money. So they say, well, you know what, I'm not going to report all my tips. And when you don't report all your tips, you're shortchanging yourself in terms of your Social Security. Welcome to Memorial Square. Really? Anyway, so if you don't report all your income through the years, so say if you do, shot these ride-sharing gigs for 5 years, and let's say you get an average of maybe $50 a week, $200 a month, or $2,000 a year in tips, and that's just $50 a week, and you do that for 5 Social Security. When it's time for you to get a portion back, so the more that you, so some people get $2,000, $3,000 a month Social Security, because if they worked for 40 years, 50 years, and they had very good businesses, and you didn't pay any estimated taxes quarterly, and you make $40,000 plus dollars, but yet you try to write off $20,000 worth of expenses, you're going to get audited. You are going to get, the IRS is going to ask you to show proof at that point, because they give you 5 years really to somewhat make a profit, if you want to say so. So if you constantly put down Uber and all these 1099 gig jobs, and this is your only job, and I'm going to talk about the part-time people too who do it on the side too. Don't think you're excluded either, because you're not. But if you are a full-time driver and you do all these different apps, and and you'd be surprised that at the end of the year when you get your 1099 and you will say, I really made that much, and then you try to go to a person to do your taxes, and you didn't keep, people say they keep track of their information on MyIQ or Stride or whatever, it keeps track of, it's a good way of keeping track of your miles. But are you really, truly keeping track of your mileage? Some people may not keep good records or whatever the case may be, and some people just give all the information to an accountant. They only could do so much that you give them. So if you don't have any other kind of tips reported of some sort, and that's your only job, the IRS takes an average. They know on average what someone would get in tips, and they do it in a they do it like what the average person would make, especially working a number of hours. That's why they ask for occupation, because they know from data, person who in the service industry, or and there are things in the books, in the law, where companies were required that they supposed to report the tips, especially if you're a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant. And there has been a lot of backlash about how much money one should get paid with regards to minimum wage. The reason why the minimum wage laws, people are like, we want minimum wage. We want minimum wage to go increase to $15 or whatever an hour, But I could tell you, if restaurants were to increase the minimum wage, and say the federal law says, we're not going to make minimum wage all across the board. It's going to be $14, $15 an hour. But for those who are in the service industry, they going to, they was speaking, or I read somewhere that if you got paid in tips, that the company is, it's like you have to, it's like, what is it? You not give up your tips, average it out in terms of what you make in tips, and adjust the minimum wage. So how Instacart and all these other companies, how they try to not pay the delivery fee, and they never disguise what the delivery fee, $5 per delivery plus the tips. So they try to say, okay, the average is $10 to $12 an hour, but if the customer gives good tips, they try to hold back the delivery fee and pay the minimum delivery fee of $1. So you saying, ooh, I'm making some good money on this food delivery. But if the customer gives you a good tip, $6 or whatever it is, Lyft and DoorDash, not Lyft, DoorDash and particularly Instacart, they will not disclose the breakdown of what you're actually getting paid. So the reason why minimum wage really should not be pushed to $15, $16 an hour is because then they're going to somewhat kind of change the classification of workers to 1099. I'm not saying I'm against minimum wage going up, but some states like Seattle and I think California, because it's so expensive to live, they said that we're going to pay $15 an hour. $15 an hour is like $6 or $5, or not even say $5. $15 an hour minimum wage in San Francisco and New York maybe, and Seattle, Washington, that's like $10, $12 an hour in Atlanta, because the cost of living is not as expensive, But really, you want to, when we go back to my topic, but you really need to report that tips, because if you don't report any tips, that income that you made, 40,000 or whatever, and you, especially if it's your only job doing it, so all those people like to brag about, I'm making $1,200 a week, and you take $1,200 a week times 52 weeks, give or take maybe a couple weeks you may not make that. And on top of not paying your quarterly estimated taxes on the income, because the tax system is pay as you go, and you ain't got nothing on tips, they just gonna take the weighted average. They're gonna take the weighted average, and they're going to estimate what you might have made in tips, and they have ways of knowing. That's why when people get audited and the tax revenue officer comes and they ask people to give you your bank statements, financial records, they look through that. And don't think that you could just go to the bank and say, well, I just keep my cash on a card, or whatever the case may be. Because you're not allowed to have and carry large sums of cash on you at one time. So where are you keeping your money? It's not under no mattress, that's for sure. But reporting those cash tips, I ain't say keep it to the, every penny, but the point that I'm making is, two, you don't want to underestimate what you're going to get in your Social Security 20, 30 years from now, or whatever the case may be. And two, you don't want to show that most of your income came from being an independent contractor or your own business, and then you try to you make 50,000, but you try to write off 20, 30,000, $30,000. That's automatically going to be the proof of those expenses. And then they're going to determine your tips. So you want to report the tips, more so because you want to make sure that when it's time to get your Social Security, and what you pay in self-employment tax, that's going to be a supplement. Because Social Security is meant to be a supplement to your retirement. It's not meant to you to live on Social Security. That's why you see a lot of elderly people saying they only get Social Security, they only live off their Social Security. And a lot of times, a lot of people you hear struggle paying bills, or even the elderly people. And you think about it, most women, in the previous generation, I'm talking about the baby boomers, or say my grandmother's age, they were housewives. They didn't work. They didn't work. They was making, minimum wage. It was like $1 something or whatever it was back in the day. That's why a lot of companies back in the day had a pension plan. They didn't have a 401k. They had a pension. So when after 40 years of working, someone collects on a pension, that pension income added up to several $1,000s a month, plus Social Security. So when people was getting, they could get $3,000, $4,000 a month, and that would be a good, that's a good source of income to live on. Because if you had a house and you paid off your house, you pay off your debts, you didn't have a whole lot of debt, you didn't have all those, okay, god dang it, I hate what I get. People didn't have all of that expenses and debt So they was able to live off of $3,000, $4,000 a month in pension and Social Security. So don't shortchange your tips, especially if you're doing this for, especially if you've been doing this ride sharing gigs for 4 or 5 years. And then say even if you make an average of $50 a month, $50 a week in cash tips, and that adds up. Even if it's $1,000 that you get in cash tips, say it's 1,000, just give it a roundabout. Say you made $1,000 of cash tips at the end of the year, and you do that and you multiply that by 5 years. That's $5,000 unaccounted for your Social Security. That's not in your Social Security account, and that $5,000 will make a big difference in regards to what you're going to get in Social Security when you turn 60 something. A lot of people, they live for the now, and there's nothing wrong with living for the now, but you have to start thinking about your future. I probably have a good 15 years of working life remaining, 16, 17 years remaining, and I have a thrift savings account. When I worked at the government, it's